Hi everyone, what's up and welcome back to my channel. If you know anything about my channel or anything about me, you know that I love Scream. The original 1996 movie is my favorite movie of all time, and this franchise just means a whole lot to me as a big horror fan, but as a fan of movies in general. And I have always been anticipating this movie since it was first announced. And I'm really excited to finally be able to sit here and give you guys a non-spoiler review of the latest installment in the Scream franchise. So like I said in the intro, this review will be completely spoiler free. If you guys do want to talk about spoilers, then come back to my channel on Monday because there will be a spoiler review up then. But for now, this review will be completely spoiler free. Everybody is safe to watch this whether you've seen the movie or not. Before I do get started talking about my thoughts, let me know down below if you have seen the latest Scream movie and what you thought about it, if you liked it, if you didn't like it. And also, while we're talking about scary movies, let me know what your favorite scary movie of all time is down below. And finally, it's time to talk about Scream. 25 years after a streak of brutal murders shocked the quiet town of Woodsboro, California, a new killer dons the Ghostface mask and begins targeting a group of teenagers to resurrect secrets from the town's deadly past. I first want to talk about the people that made this movie happen because I think the filmmakers and the writers and everybody involved behind the scenes really did a great job in crafting a horror movie that is both fresh but also pays homage to the movies that have come before. And I think that's something really special because as a Scream fan, there's a lot that I can appreciate that is obviously coming from the past, but there's also a whole lot of new stuff in this movie that I can just appreciate on its own. And I think that's when you've made a really great sequel, and Scream definitely did that. And I first want to talk about the directors because I just think they did such an excellent job. Ever since they were signed onto the project, I was really excited because I'm a really big fan of Ready or Not, and they also directed that movie. And I think the style of Ready or Not almost emulated a lot of what Scream does, that kind of horror, dark comedy that I think Scream is really famous for, and it's one of the reasons that I really like it. And the camera work in this movie was excellent. There are a lot of certain shots that I think were very inspired by Wes Craven, who directed all the other Scream movies, but there's also so many new styles of filmmaking that are really just stylistic choices from the new directors, and you can really just tell that they wanted to bring their own spin on it, which is totally what everybody should do when they're making a sequel. I think a lot of times sequels tend to just really want to do what the old did and not bring anything new, and I think they definitely said we're gonna do something different, and it totally worked. I also really like the way a lot of the kills were shot. I think this is one of the most brutal kills in the Scream franchise, not because the kills are out there. I think honestly the kills are pretty standard for what I'm used to in a Scream movie. When you compare this to other movies like Halloween Kills that came out, I still think Halloween Kills is way more brutal than this. But the way the kills were shot, a lot of the times they just really stood there and the camera didn't move away. It really just stuck there for a very long time where you were almost like uncomfortable, and I think that worked really great because in previous Scream movies sometimes they would just cut away to the killer, cut away to somebody else, or just cut away in general instead of fully showing us this. But in this movie, they really made sure that we stayed there, and it was scary, uncomfortable, and it worked for a horror movie. And that definitely means that the tone of this movie is a little bit different than the other ones. I really enjoyed the take that this movie had. It was a lot more serious and it was a lot darker, but it still knew how to be funny, and that's where I want to praise the screenplay because Scream is known for its meta humor, its commentary on how movies and Hollywood and just society is at the time. And I thought it was so clever with how it incorporated all of that with the characters, and it was so cool seeing how like modern this movie gets because obviously we're in 2022. Horror has changed a lot in 25 years, and I like that they talked about that a little bit. As a horror fan, I just thought it was excellent. And although it does have some of the certain beats that other movies in Scream does, especially the first Scream, the 1996 original, was still able to kind of play its own originality with the rules of horror and how to survive a horror movie. And it was like familiar, but it was fresh, and that's what I love the most about this movie. And I want to talk about the new characters because genuinely I think this is one of the best new set of characters that we've gotten in Scream in a long time. And you know, I don't think anything will ever beat the first Scream. I love that group of friends and that movie is perfection to me, but I think this is as close as we're gonna get because I really like these set of characters and the actors that played them. First of all, I thought they all had really excellent chemistry with each other, especially Jack Quaid and Melissa Barrera. I really liked them together on screen and I thought they worked excellently. I loved all their scenes, and Jack Quaid was really funny in the movie. I thought he definitely brought most of the comedic moments in the movie, and I thought he just really did a great job in this movie. I also just want to praise Melissa Barrera because she did such a great job as well. And what I really liked about this set of characters as well is that we really kind of got to see more of their emotions. I think it's really common in slasher movies for people to just die and you not really seeing the repercussions of that, or the movie just kind of skipping over that. And I think this movie really said, we're not going to do that. We're going to actually show how traumatized these generations are. And it definitely worked with the main character of this movie, played by Melissa Barrera. And I'm just super excited to see what comes next. In the Heights, Scream, she's really great, and she played 2 different roles in these movies that I recently saw her in, and I just really loved her. Like, what I took away from this movie the most was her performance, because I just really liked what her character brought to the table, and it was very unique and something that was unexpected with what they did with her character. I just, again, want to praise the screenplay, because I think it was interwoven throughout the entire movie very well. I also really appreciate that this movie gets us familiar with the new set of characters, where genuinely, if you take away the legacy characters like Dewey, Gale, Sydney, this movie would still pretty much work. Yes, we love the legacy characters. I'm a huge fan of all 3 of them. Seeing them back on screen gave me chills, and I was just really happy to see them. And I'm going to talk about them in just a little second, but for the most part of the movie, it's these new characters. The legacy characters are definitely there, and they do play a big part in the movie, but this movie works because of them. The driving force of the movie are these new characters, are our new protagonists, and that's excellent because it doesn't overly rely on the old. It relies on the new, which I think is really important when you're doing a movie like Scream. And talking about the legacy characters, the standout of this movie was David Arquette as Dewey. I've always been a fan of Dewey, but I really liked what he did here, and I just liked what all of them did. And I also really appreciated that we got some backstory to what's going on with them, but again, wasn't too much of a focus because we're in a new generation, there's a new set of rules. This is a whole new thing. This movie flew by. By the time the 3rd act rolls around and we start getting reveals and, you know, the typical Scream 3rd act structure doesn't slow down, and this one definitely doesn't slow down. I think this is one of the best paced movies because it covers a lot, honestly, and it does it in a pretty great way. Now, as much as I can praise this movie isn't perfect, and the 3rd act of this movie, although I think it's well paced, it does have some issues, and I can't really fully get into them without getting into spoilers, so I'm not going to really cover too much, but I think the 3rd act of this movie is a little jumbled, and there's a lot of things that remain unclear, and some loose ends with the movie, but I still think the way the movie wrapped up was pretty good, and I don't know if they're going to continue making more Scream movies, but genuinely as a fan and as a fan of the franchise, I think where the movie ended was a pretty good way to finish it off, because something that I didn't like about Scream 4 was I feel like I didn't get a sense of this being the end, or I didn't get a sense of this feeling like a satisfying finale. As much as I like that movie, I think this one is much more satisfying in that aspect. And before I end this review, I just want to talk about my experience seeing this in the movie theater, because I think this is a must watch at the movie theater if you're able to do so, because the sound design was excellent. I saw this at Dolby Cinema, and I love watching horror movies in Dolby because I just think the sound of it works. It's just so much more enhanced in Dolby. And the sound design here was excellent. I also loved hearing some familiar scores from other movies that I'm a really big fan of, and just the new score was excellent. Definitely think this was one of the more anxiety-inducing Scream movies, because I think they did a good job at just developing stakes and just showing us that this Ghostface is not messing around, and I really enjoyed that about this movie. If you guys haven't seen Scream, I hope this review convinced you to do so, because even if you're not a fan of the franchise, I think this movie might surprise you, and I'm just so happy that it exists, because it really just feels like a love letter to the Scream fans, but it also is just a really great horror movie. It wasn't just there to give us fan service. They genuinely thought, hey, let's make a good storyline, and I think it definitely worked. And at the end of the day, I think Wes Craven would have been so proud of this movie, and as a really massive Wes Craven fan, I felt so satisfied watching it. But if you haven't already, let me know down below what you think of the new Scream installment. I'm really excited to hear what you all have to say, and make sure to come back to my channel on Monday, and if you aren't subscribed, please subscribe and turn on the notifications so you don't miss that upload, because there are some spoilers that I want to talk about that I could not get into in this video. And thank you all so much for watching today's review, and I hope you guys have a really great rest of your day and watch Scream this weekend, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye everyone!